What came next turned an already humiliating night for Prince Harry into a legendary television moment, one that will likely haunt him for years. After the break, Graham Norton, ever the mischief maker, asked Daniel Radcliffe if he had ever felt the same pressure Harry claimed to feel from fame. The question could have been an easy lifeline for Harry, a chance for Radcliffe to empathize and soften the blow. Instead, Radcliffe delivered the final strike. With the calmness of someone who knew exactly what he was doing, Radcliffe said, "The difference is, I didn't ask the world to feel sorry for me while living in a mansion and demanding special treatment. Fame is strange, yes, but gratitude matters. I think people respect honesty more than self-pity." The studio erupted again. Graham Norton let out a dramatic, "Oh," as if acknowledging that the gauntlet had been thrown. Harry shifted in his seat, visibly rattled. His forced smile faltered, his body stiffened, and cameras caught the briefest flash of fury in his eyes. This wasn't just a jab. It was a dismantling of the very foundation of Harry's narrative, the victimhood, the constant complaint about royal life, the demands for sympathy while basking in the privileges of wealth and global recognition. Radcliffe, with the credibility of someone who had endured global stardom since childhood, cut through Harry's offenses with brutal precision. Behind the scenes, multiple insiders later confirmed that Harry was livid. He reportedly stormed into the green room after the show, fuming that Radcliffe had publicly disrespected him and undermined his platform. Meghan Markle, according to one insider, was equally enraged, texting frantically throughout the broadcast as she watched the debacle unfold in real time. But the truth was undeniable. Radcliffe hadn't just embarrassed Harry. He had exposed him. And once exposed, the facade of victimhood Harry and Meghan had carefully curated was impossible to maintain. To make matters worse, audience members who attended the taping later leaked unedited moments, including Harry snapping at staffers during the commercial break and demanding a private word with the producers. These clips went viral within hours, painting Harry not as a victim, but as a diva unable to handle criticism. The fallout was swift. Columnists branded the incident a royal implosion. American commentators, who had once cautiously embraced Harry, now mocked him as thin-skinned and out of touch. Even in Britain, where Harry has long been at odds with the press, there was a rare moment of unity. Left, right, and center all agreed that Harry had been humiliated and that he had only himself to blame. Meanwhile, Daniel Radcliffe's reputation soared. Overnight, he was hailed as the unlikely hero who dared to say what millions had been thinking. Social media dubbed him the real Prince of Honesty, and memes of him in royal robes, sitting on a throne, flooded the internet. Harry, in contrast, became the meme. His scowl, his awkward half-laugh, his desperate attempts to regain control, all of it was immortalized online, replayed endlessly as proof of his unraveling. In the end, the Graham Norton episode wasn't just another talk show blunder. It was a defining moment. The night Prince Harry's carefully managed image collided head-on with unscripted reality. For years, he had controlled the narrative through documentaries, ghostwritten memoirs, and friendly interviewers. But live television, with its unfiltered truth and unforgiving audience, stripped away the polish. And standing across from him was Daniel Radcliffe, a man who had every excuse to crumble under fame, but chose instead to carry it with humility. The contrast could not have been starker. As the credits rolled and Harry exited the stage in silence, the audience knew they had witnessed more than entertainment. They had witnessed a reckoning. Because sometimes it only takes one unscripted moment, one well-placed truth, to topple an illusion years in the making. The aftermath of that night was nothing short of seismic. Prince Harry, once positioned as a rebellious royal carving out a new identity, suddenly found himself recast as a symbol of entitlement and arrogance. The Graham Norton incident with Daniel Radcliffe did more than spark laughter. It crystallized a wider perception that had been building for years. Viewers across the globe weren't just entertained by Radcliffe's brutal honesty. They were vindicated. They had grown tired of Harry's endless grievances, his perpetual retelling of the same story of royal oppression, and the irony of him doing so while living a life of luxury in Montecito. Radcliffe's words distill what many had thought, but few had said on such a visible stage. Fame is difficult, yes, but it does not excuse hypocrisy. As the days turned into weeks, headlines refused to let the humiliation fade. In Britain, tabloids ran montages of Harry's most tone-deaf interviews alongside Radcliffe's withering remarks, creating an unflattering contrast that seemed to grow harsher with every replay. In America, late-night comedians latched onto the scandal, inserting Harry's awkward smirk and Radcliffe's punchline into monologues that reached millions. Social media platforms exploded with short clips, looping the exact moment Radcliffe dismantled Harry's self-pity with surgical precision. The more Harry's camp tried to push back, briefing friendly journalists, issuing quiet denials to allies, the deeper he seemed to sink. The dynamic between Harry and Meghan also came under renewed scrutiny. According to insiders, Meghan was furious not only because her husband had been publicly embarrassed, but also because it threatened the brand they had painstakingly built together. Their image, built on victimhood and the supposed authenticity of their truth, suddenly looked fragile in the face of a young actor's unapologetic honesty. Meghan, reportedly, had advised Harry against appearing on Norton's show in the first place, knowing the host's reputation for playful but sharp humor. That decision now seemed prophetic, as Harry's insistence on using the show to promote his own narrative backfired in spectacular fashion. The humiliation also bled into Harry's professional ventures. Executives at Netflix, already weary after lukewarm reviews of the Sussexes' previous projects, began questioning whether their star power had peaked. Spotify had already parted ways with the couple, and whispers spread in Hollywood circles that Harry was radioactive, a figure whose interviews generated clicks, but not the kind of admiration or respect that sustain a long-term brand. In contrast, Radcliffe's star shone brighter. Overnight, he became a cultural figurehead of humility, the antithesis of Harry's entitlement. Every media outlet wanted his take, and his name trended globally for days. Inside the royal family, the incident reportedly elicited a mixture of private amusement and cold satisfaction. Courtiers described palace corridors buzzing with quiet acknowledgement that Harry's downfall had come not from a carefully orchestrated royal strategy, but from his own hubris. King Charles, according to a close aide, watched the clip more than once, while Prince William was said to have laughed harder than he has in months. For the royals, who had weathered years of Harry and Meghan's accusations, the public dismantling of Harry's narrative on neutral ground was nothing less than poetic justice. What made this moment so destructive for Harry was not just Radcliffe's words, but the way they resonated with an exhausted public. People had reached a tipping point. They no longer saw Harry as the tragic prince walking in his mother's shadow, but as a privileged man unable to reconcile his wealth with his grievances. Radcliffe's remarks sliced open that contradiction and left it exposed for all to see. Unlike Harry, Radcliffe had lived with the suffocating attention of global fame, but had never once demanded the world pity him. That lived experience carried weight, and Harry had no defense. As time went on, analysts began calling the Norton Show debacle a cultural reset in the perception of Prince Harry. For years, critics had struggled to articulate why his story rang hollow, why his complaints often felt grating rather than inspiring. Now, thanks to a single unscripted exchange, the world understood. Harry's downfall was not about one interview, one book, or one television appearance. It was about the cumulative effect of constantly demanding sympathy while living in privilege. Radcliffe's voice gave that frustration a focal point, and once spoken, it could not be unsaid. Harry's next public appearance only deepened the damage. At a charity gala weeks later, he attempted to deliver a speech about resilience and overcoming adversity. But instead of rapturous applause, reports described a lukewarm reception, with audience members visibly distracted, whispering, and even laughing quietly at moments where Harry seemed to take himself too seriously. What once might have been interpreted as inspiring now came across as performative. His words had lost their weight, and the shadow of Radcliffe's televised dismantling loomed over every sentence. By the end of the year, Harry found himself in a new reality. No longer the rebellious royal forging his own path, but the punchline of his own story. Meanwhile, Daniel Radcliffe, who had never sought to become a cultural commentator, inadvertently became one by simply speaking his truth. The irony was stark. Harry, with all his platforms and carefully managed appearances, had failed to convince the public of his authenticity. Radcliffe, with a single unscripted comment, had succeeded,